It was a cold morning when Jake Mitchell stood before Judge Eleanor Davis, his heart pounding in his chest. The courtroom was quiet, save for the soft rustling of papers and the occasional clink of a gavel. At just 17 years old, Jake had found himself in a situation no teenager should ever be in, facing charges for a robbery he committed months earlier. The crime had been rash, impulsive, and fueled by frustration. Frustration over his family's financial struggles, the absence of his father, and a sense of hopelessness that seemed to follow him wherever he went. Jake had never intended for things to go this far. What began as a stolen wallet from a local convenience store spiraled out of control when he was caught by the police, who later discovered he had been involved in several other thefts. The judge, a respected figure in the community, had seen many troubled youths in her courtroom, but Jake's case was different. The robbery wasn't just a crime. It was a cry for help from a teenager lost in a world where he felt invisible. As the trial began, Jake sat quietly in the defendant's chair, his eyes cast downward. His hands were tightly clasped together, and his leg bounced nervously under the weight of his uncertainty. He was a far cry from the confident teenager he once was. In the months following his arrest, Jake had spent time in juvenile detention, where he had time to reflect on the choices that led him to this moment. His mother, Cynthia, sat in the front row, her face a mixture of worry and hope. She had been his greatest supporter, even when the rest of the world had turned its back on him. The prosecutor, a stern middle-aged man named William Harris, painted a clear picture of Jake's actions. He detailed how Jake had stolen money, damaged property, and caused distress to the local business owner, Mrs. Kelly, who had been present at the scene during the robbery. Mrs. Kelly's testimony was emotional. She spoke about how Jake's crime had shattered her sense of safety and violated the trust she had in her community. But as the prosecutor finished his remarks, Jake's defense attorney, James Collier, stepped forward. He was an experienced lawyer, but even he knew this was going to be a tough case. Jake had confessed to the crime, and the evidence was damning. There was no denying the robbery. The only question now was what kind of future Jake would face. Jake's defense was brief. He stood up, his voice trembling as he addressed the court. "Your Honor," he began, his gaze fixed on the floor, I don't have an excuse for what I did. I know I hurt people, and I'm sorry. But I don't want to be the kind of person who keeps making mistakes. I want to do better. I want to fix what I've broken." The room fell silent. It wasn't the kind of speech most people expected from a teenager in his position, especially one facing serious consequences. Jake wasn't making excuses. He wasn't blaming anyone but himself. He was taking responsibility. Judge Davis, an experienced judge who had heard countless cases like this, felt something shift in the room. It was rare, even in a court of law, to hear such raw honesty. It wasn't just an apology. It was a young man asking for a chance to change. "I know I've done some bad things," Jake continued, his voice gaining strength, "but I don't want to be defined by my mistakes. I'm not asking you to let me off the hook. I'm asking you for a chance to make things right, to show that I can be better. I don't want to hurt anyone anymore. I want to be someone my mom can be proud of. I want to make up for what I've done." There was a pause before Judge Davis spoke. She had been a judge for over 20 years, but in all that time, she had never encountered a moment quite like this. Most defendants in situations like Jake's were defensive, quick to justify their actions or point fingers. But here was a teenager, raw, vulnerable, and filled with remorse. "Mr. Mitchell," Judge Davis said, her voice steady but filled with empathy, "I must admit, this is not what I expected to hear today. I've heard many things from young people in this courtroom, but never such honesty, nor such genuine remorse. You've made a mistake, but you've also shown a great deal of courage in owning up to it." She paused for a moment, allowing the weight of her words to sink in. Jake sat, his eyes wide, awaiting her decision. I understand your desire to change, she continued, and I believe you when you say you want to do better. That said, actions have consequences, but it is also important that we, as a society, give people the tools and opportunities to grow from their mistakes. That is why I am going to offer you a chance for redemption. Jake's heart skipped a beat. Was she saying what he thought she was saying? I am sentencing you to 300 hours of community service, which you will perform at a local shelter that helps young people who are at risk of making the same mistakes you have. Additionally, I am ordering that you attend counseling sessions to address the deeper issues that led to your actions. This will not be easy, but I believe it is the right step for you. The courtroom was stunned into silence. Jake blinked, processing the words. His mother, sitting in the front row, let out a breath she didn't even realize she had been holding. But there is one condition, Judge Davis added, her gaze softening. You will return here in 6 months, and I expect you to have shown progress. If you have followed through with the counseling and the community service, I will consider reducing your sentence. But if you fail, you will face the full extent of the law. Jake nodded quickly, his eyes now filled with tears. Thank you, Your Honor. I swear I won't let you down. As the gavel came down, signaling the end of the proceedings, a wave of relief washed over Jake. He had been given a chance to prove himself, to right his wrongs. He was no longer just the boy who had made a mistake. He was someone who could change his life. His heart swelled with gratitude as he turned to his mother, who was already standing with open arms. In that courtroom, something extraordinary had happened. A teenager's apology, his genuine desire to change, had not only impacted the judge, but had also restored hope for a future where second chances were possible. It was a reminder that even in the face of wrongdoing, there was always room for growth, for redemption, and for change. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, subscribe, and share.